So welcome everyone. My name is Blanca Castro, Executive Director of the International Women's Coffee Alliance, and today I feel so honored and happy and really excited to have a new webinar from our community. These kind of webinars, the intention is to share, to get to know each other better, and share the knowledge and experiences that throughout our community we are developing and we are experiencing. This time was the chapter IWCA Germany who asked us if we could have this very special webinar along with BWT to talk about why water matters. I'm sorry, I'm just a little tired, but I'm so happy and thrilled in being here today. I need to give a little bit of instructions on how are we going to work today. First of all, we're very lucky that we have a translation into Spanish. Please look into for those who will prefer to use Spanish, look at the button that says more or más, and there you will be able to click into the translation and you'll be able to find Ute, who is our kind translator today. We will try to have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, or please send your questions at the chat box. And then, as Kirsten already mentioned, we have a link that will guide you to the handouts that Ben Helt kindly shared with us. You can either have them right now, or you can print them later on and follow up, or you can ask us a little bit more of support on that regards. With no further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce Ana Maria Fasin, the IWCA Germany board member, who has coordinated all this work. Thank you, Ana Maria. Welcome.
Thank you, Blanca, for the kind introduction and for your continued support to our chapter in Germany. So good morning for the people in US, Latin America. Good afternoon for the ones that are in Europe and Africa. I don't know if we have somebody in Asia, so good evening, just in case, and welcome. It is truly wonderful to see so many of you join us from different countries. Moments like this one remind us that coffee is not just a cup, that is a community that connects us across cultures and borders. Today is very special for us, and special milestones for IWCA Germany, as this is the very first webinar organized by our chapter. We launched this webinar to create, as Blanca says, opportunities for learning and knowledge sharing and strengthen the collaboration across our global IWCA community. I would like to thank especially BWT water+more, a value member of the IWCA Germany, for partnering with us and bringing us such an important topic to our community. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers, Frank Neuhausen and Ben Helt. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Frank, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Ana Maria. Thanks so much, Blanca, for introducing us. And let me say it's a pleasure to be invited to have this webinar, and also to support you and your organization for some years, and now seeing the organization growing so well over the last years, and especially also now at the World of Coffee in Brussels. So it's a pleasure for us to support you. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to take a very short time just to give you a very short introduction into BWT Corporation and BWT water+ more in particular, before Ben Helt will go to the main part and tell you a little bit some more details for the quality of water that is relevant for coffee. BWT water+more is part of the international BWT group, and what is common for the international BWT group is water. So in many areas, BWT is leading in the optimization of water for industrial purposes, for pharmaceutical purposes, for household purposes. And we as BWT Water and More are the part that exists in the meantime since 21 years that is really focused in all our solutions and products and services for the market that we call HoReCa. But let me first explain a little bit more about the targets that is really the umbrella for all the activities of BWT. So there's a clear mission defined, and the mission is to provide safe and hygiene and healthy water. We want to see as our brand as really supporting people worldwide for many, many applications around water. And our vision is to change the world zip by zip, but just means make the world a little bit better with what we can do with our services, with our products. And we want to share these values, these brand values, with all our partners. Just to let you know, BWT Corporation has a very long history. It goes back about 200 years ago. At the end of the day, the actual BWT Corporation was, let's say, founded by a management buyout in 1999 by our actual CEO, Andreas Weisenbacher. And since that, developed further to an international corporation. So BWT as a corporation, in the meantime, more than 1.7 billion in turnover, more than 6,500 employees, and we are present, let's say, all over the world. This is the BWT Corporation. When it goes to BWT Water and More, when we started 21 years, we even did not exist. After 21 years, we have also a presence all over Europe and all over the world. We are strong, getting strong in Asia. We're getting strong very much also in the US, in South America. And this is something that also was very nice to see for us at the World of Coffee, that our business is really fully international. In general, our services and products are made for the point of use in professional applications in what we call HoReCa, so hotels, restaurants, catering, gastronomy. So we are serving different applications, but our main target market and things to support is coffee. So since the beginning on, our focus was in coffee and the learning how to serve best with our water optimization for the needs of the market, for the needs of a barista, for the needs of a roaster. And it was really a process that was driven on one hand by the technical background of BWT Corporation, but also by our sales team, very near in the market, close to our customers, and especially a feedback from our partners in the market that always helped us to understand, okay, what can we do better? And therefore, we are a member of SCA from the beginning on. We are very close working together with SCA since many years in terms of supporting SCA. We are also the sponsor of the World Barista Championship and several other activities. And this is a very, very important partnership for us, let's say, since more than 15 years. And this is very important for us, but also partnerships like for WCA, because we also want to support many other organizations around in this international market. And therefore we started quite some years ago, and now we are happy to be with you and be able to support you further in your development. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So I believe is it my turn, Frank?
Yes, please.
Sure. Awesome. Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. I'm joining you today from a small town near Bologna, Italy, where our production facility is for our reverse osmosis unit. So I'm not home today, but I am here and I'm excited about that. I've been in coffee for about 20 years. And in that time, I've owned a roasting company. I've had a cafe. I've sold those. I've opened coffee training centers. I worked for the Specialty Coffee Association for 10 years. And now I'm in the water part of my coffee journey. And I think the reason that I wanted to share that with you right off the bat is for you to know I know what it feels like to buy and sell coffee with my own money. I know what it's like to buy equipment with my own money. I know what it's like to buy water filtration for my equipment, the wrong water filtration. And I know what it's like to call for help along the way, right? So that's the perspective I try to bring to events like these. And today I'm doing something, I kind of crafted something very specific for this group, something that I haven't delivered before like this. Sometimes when we're going to do a very small discussion about water, and it's like we're just going to open that lid just a little bit and then close it back down to where we can get this done in the time that we're here today. And sometimes we have a tendency to go very broad with our terms and lower our expectations of the group. But I know from the time I've spent in this industry that if I was going to have a group from the IWCA here, I could have a higher expectations and we could do more work in this session than what we may do with other groups. So what I want to do today is talk about or prepare you to start your journey to be a better consumer of water treatment by knowing more about the water that you have. We've done a lot of work with the University of Zurich, right? And we've supported a lot of work that they've done when it comes to exploring not only how we protect our equipment with water filtration, but how we can unlock flavors and please our senses more in our coffee, right? And in order to do this, we've set up a framework. They've developed a framework of thinking through this of measure, aim, treat. On the handout that's been provided to you, you'll see that right across the top. Now, you may or may not have had time to print this handout, and that's okay, right? If you have it printed out, I'm going to be asking you to complete it along with me. If you haven't had a chance, there will be several times where I instruct you that it's a good time to take a screenshot, and then you can complete that later. But you're going to see that measure, aim, treat across the top. Since we have a long time relationship with IWCA, I'm looking at this webinar as being the first, not the only, right? So I want to prepare you for future conversations that we have about water, or even giving you the information you need now so that if you're getting instruction from someone else, you'll be better prepared. As I've learned a lot about water in the past year, right, I've started to come to the opinion that one of the first questions we have to ask ourselves is, do we need to manage the minerals? Typically, that answer is yes, right? But sometimes not. But most of the time, it is yes. It should come as no surprise that in this natural world, we are given water where we need to find a balance in the amount of minerals that find their way into our water. If we have too many of the minerals that we like, it starts to threaten our equipment, right? It puts us in a position where we may have lime scale buildup or those minerals turning into rocks inside of our espresso equipment, which we never want, right? But that's not the only thing it can do. Sometimes if we have too many of the minerals that we like in our water, it can start to squeeze down the acidity that we see our market, especially in the specialty coffee industry, that they like. So it can start to mute the flavors. So high mineral concentration can threaten both our equipment and our senses. But if we get overly aggressive and we have too few minerals, we miss those minerals that we like to taste, right? The human body, humans like the taste of minerals like calcium and magnesium, right? So we want those because we love the way that they taste and the way that they add flavor to our coffee. However, we might be missing those, but also if we don't have enough minerals, that water is thirsty, right? And it can start to eat away at the metals inside of our coffee equipment, causing leaks and costly repairs along the way. So part of what we try to do is help people manage their minerals to hit that balance. Today, I wanted to focus on first, how do I know which minerals I have in my water and how do we communicate them? I think communication about our water is going to be super important. I know that we have people from all around the world on this call, which is so exciting. And this is a little off topic, so I did not bring this prepared. But right now, we know that the mineral content has an impact on the perceived acidity, the perceived sweetness, the brightness that coffee has to offer. And if we taste it at origin, if our producers are tasting this at origin with water that has low mineral content and experiencing these coffees that have great bright acidity and very high fidelity flavors, and then they send it to a buyer who's not using similar water, their water might not be bad, but it may have a higher mineral content that is pressing that acidity down. And then all of a sudden we have to have a discussion about quality when the coffee didn't change, right? But the water did. And I hope that we get to the point, not where we prescribe what type of water it needs to be, but where we start to communicate. When you send a sample, a coffee sample, to a buyer, that you don't just include the altitude and the processing method and the location and all of that great detail that we need to have, but then also include information about the water you use to cup it, right? If we can just start communicating that, it may unearth opportunities for us to have a more aligned and sustainable and fair vertical supply chain with that. So, what I want to do today is go through a brief presentation where you make your own handout, right? That's what's been sent to you is I would like for you to make your own handout for this, your own study guide, so that you can communicate those properties that matter most in water. In coffee, we've decided those are two things, total hardness and carbonate hardness. So let's get started with our handouts there. And again, don't worry if you haven't had a chance to print the handout yet, that's okay. I'm going to instruct you at some times that you can. This is interesting. I am getting an error. Stay tuned. I'm assuming that I have all of the permissions, but it's giving me a delay.
Yes, you can. You
Okay.
can share.
Okay. Friends, I sure hate to do this, but it looks like I may need to exit quickly and come back. Okay.
Don't worry about that.
Okay, let's
And
see
I
what
hope
happens.
that everybody had the time to open up the link where the
Yeah.
handout is. It's very easy.
Yeah, this may be a good time for us to do that. Friends, I'm going to leave. I'm going to come right back. This is a great time for you. If you haven't had a chance to print this
Yeah.
handout, let's get that done, or at least have that available. I'll see you in a moment.
Don't worry, Ben. This is uh this is a good opportunity, as he said, to click on the link to get the handout. It's a two-page handout, very easy to understand.
While we're waiting, I'll share my screen of the
Okay.
handout.
Okay. He's coming back.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience, friends. I know that can be frustrating, but here we are. Let's go ahead and get started with this. Let's top one. All right.
Great.
What you should see on your screen right now is our BWT logo. Can I get a thumbs up with somebody that they've got that? That's awesome. Okay, so with our handout open, when we start talking about the minerals that find their way into our water, it's very important to understand the relationship between carbon dioxide and water, right? It all starts here. These two really love each other. most of the time. I would think if water and carbon dioxide had a Facebook status, it would be it's complicated with these two. They'd really like to get together in certain situations, right? If it's too hot, carbon dioxide's out. If it's too cold, carbon dioxide's out. And they can only take so much of each other. And sometimes we use pressure to put them together. That's how we get carbonated water, is we have to push it into this space. Otherwise, when water forms in the clouds right off the bat, one of the first things it absorbs is carbon dioxide. It's very rare in nature that we would ever experience pure water because water is a universal solvent. Given enough time and enough contact and the right conditions, water can dissolve part of almost anything. And one of the first things it absorbs is carbon dioxide. When it does, it makes it very acidic, makes it hungry, right? And it hits the ground and it starts filtering its way through everything it touches, right? That includes rocks like limestone and granite, volcanic soil, those things, but also all of those things that we use on our farms, things that we use on the highways to remove snow and ice. All of that finds its way into our water, right? And a lot of it is because of this relationship. As you learn more about how we treat water and how we manage minerals, much of what we're trying to do is get the water back to this relationship. We want to get it back to this point where it becomes water and carbon dioxide again, right? And that's what you learn when we get to the treatment part. Now, as it picks up all of these minerals on its way, our local municipalities are often working to make sure that what it picks up is not dangerous to us. But they're not always worried about our coffee equipment and how our coffee tastes, right? They're not dealing with these minerals in a way that is helpful to us, right? So that's what we want to do. We're going to be talking about some of the minerals that get picked up along the way that matter most to us in coffee. When these minerals are picked up, right? When water dissolves a compound, it's not like that compound is moving around in the water, right? Together, it splits it up into its parts. And we call those parts ions, right? So on your handout, you're going to see these different colors. These are not official scientific colors for these compounds. These are colors I've selected for this just to help us study and remember how they pair along the way. Now, these ions are broken up in water, but they have to stay in balance, right? There has to be the same number of positive ones and the same number of negative ones, because what keeps them together is a magnetic pull, right? A kind of a electrical magnetic pull that keeps them together, right? And there's two categories of these, and we have some special names for those. So above this line to the left, I would like for you to put cat ions, just like this. Now, it's not super important that you remember which one's positive and which one's negative, but we are going to put a plus sign next to this. Cat ions are positive. That's how we can remember that, because cats have paws and they are positive, right? And then on the other side, this other column, where you're going to do anions, and anions are negative. Again, that's not critical, but what is critical to note is that there are two different ions and they have to be in balance with each other. Okay, so cations and anions. Now, I'd like to take you through these. You've got them written on your handout already, right? So you don't have to worry about writing these down. But what I want to talk about some of the ions because they each have a particular property, right? So first we have calcium, right? This is something we pick up from a variety of sources, mostly from limestone, right? So if you're in an area where there's lots of limestone, you're going to get lots of calcium, but it's not always paired with the same thing, as you'll see soon. I'm using pink here, as we do at BWT, to represent magnesium, something else that we get in our water and we particularly like it. This light blue I'm using to represent sodium, right? And then, of course, this dark blue is going to represent hydrogen. A moment ago, I told you about the importance of the relationship between water and carbon dioxide, right? When those two get together, they create something called carbonic acid, which I'm going to repeat in a minute. Sometimes we're using hydrogen to get them back to that relationship. Okay, so calcium, magnesium, sodium, and hydrogen. Right? Now, those are common cations that we find in compounds in our water. Now let's take a look at our anions that we commonly find in our water. First is bicarbonate, sometimes referred to as just carbonate, right? So calcium bicarbonate, magnesium bicarbonate. We're going to get to those pairings in just a second, but that usually has to do with something that's rocky, right, and scaly along the way. Then we have sulfates, is what I will be using this red color for, right? So sulfate, I shouldn't put an S there. Ooh. Sulfate. And then this orange one is chlorides. Come on, figures. All right. These are commonly found ions that are floating around in our water freely, and they need to be in balance. You need the right amount of positive and the right amount of negative, or that water is unstable. It's almost impossible. Okay. Now we've talked about these pieces. Let's put them together in some commonly found compounds in our water. So let's go to I apologize. Let's talk about some of the properties of these before we do that. So here's what we know. We know that in this first one, calcium and magnesium comprise hardness. Anytime we use the term hardness, especially in the coffee world, we're talking about calcium and magnesium. Sodium does not contribute to hardness, right? Calcium and magnesium do, right? That's something that no matter what that ion is paired with, contributes to hardness. Now, bicarbonates, those yellow pieces, increase alkalinity, buffering against acidity. Alkalinity is a property that is a water's ability to resist a change in acidity, right? Becoming more acidic. And it works on our coffee too. The higher the alkalinity, the less perceived acidity we will have in our coffee, right? It resists that change. So that means a lot of bicarbonates, less acidity, right? So this final piece is chlorides threaten to corrode metals. I'd appreciate if you would write that in there. Understanding these three things unlocks a lot of power when it comes to choosing the right solution for the water you have, right? Just understanding these three pieces. Let's talk about some of the pairings that we find, some of the compounds that arrive from those, and define hardness in different versions of it. So as you can tell from the colors on your sheet, we're going to start pairing them up, right? So calcium, bicarbonate, right? All I did was take that cation, ion, anion, put them together. So I got calcium bicarbonate with the gray and yellow. Here I have calcium sulfate, right? All I'm doing is pairing the colors. Magnesium bicarbonate and, oh no, yeah, and then magnesium sulfate. Now, I can't see the chat window when I'm sharing my screen. I'm trusting that if there's a question along the way, that somebody will interrupt me for that and let me address that question. And let's see here. Sodium bicarbonate. Sodium chloride. All I'm doing is matching those pairs, except for this one. For this one, I would like for you to write carbonic acid, please. I'm going to give you just a moment to make sure that you've written all of these in. Otherwise, this is a good moment to take a screenshot. Oop. Somehow I ended up with a red line here. I don't know what that is. Okay, I'm just going to give you a moment to make sure you've done that. Awesome. Now, I would like for you to draw a square. Okay, I'm going to do that using this tool. Let's see if I can no fill. I would like you to draw a square around these four. You're going to draw a square around calcium bicarbonate, calcium sulfate, magnesium bicarbonate, magnesium sulfate. Draw a square around those. And then I would like for you to label that anywhere on the paper as total hardness. When we measure total hardness, this is what we're measuring, right? All of these four. Why? Because calcium and magnesium comprise hardness. Now let's draw another square. If I can get up there. Apologize. Well, let's do this. We're going to draw another square around these two. The calcium bicarbonate and the magnesium bicarbonate. We already know that hardness is calcium and magnesium, so this is carbonate hardness, right? So let's put a carbonate hardness label by this. In the coffee world, we will also use that term alkalinity, right? A buffer against becoming acidity. This carbonate hardness almost is always the same as alkalinity. We use carbonate hardness as the unit of our alkalinity, right? So this equals your carbonate hardness. When you are communicating with a provider like BWT to find you the right solution, these two pieces of information are critical. Another handout I gave you was the SCA water chart. Now, the SCA does not own like the axes of alkalinity and total hardness, but what they do have done to help us is provide a framework where we can kind of target where we want to be and move around this chart, right? And we use technologies to take us from where we are closer to where we want to be, which we will be discussing in a future session. So it's important to understand that these are those key properties. I want you to draw one other box, and I don't want us to get too off track with this one in this small session that we're doing today, but I want it to be available to you in the future. And that is, I want you to circle all of these yellow blocks, right? So all of these bicarbonates, right? Just circle those, right? Draw a square just around those, not around the pairs, just around the yellow blocks. And this is going to contribute to our alkalinity. Okay, this is going to be something that impacts our alkalinity. That's a topic that goes beyond today's webinar, but it's something that as you continue to learn more about water and how softening works, that will be important for you. So alkalinity there. Okay. Have we had any questions in the chat window yet that I need to address?
Nope,
Okay.
none yet.
Okay, wonderful. So these compounds are very important to us, right? Let's take a look at, but just keep in mind, when these are in water, they're not all together. They're floating around, disassociated from each other. That's what's being dissolved is. They're not paired, right? And this gives us some opportunities. Even though they're not paired in there, for today's presentation, I've put them in a space where they can be paired, right? To where it would look something like this, right? And I want to kind of give you a preview of how we can treat these using something like ion exchange, right? And so here we have some water that's very typical to what I would have at home in Kansas City, right? I want to just use this as an example. If I was to calculate the total hardness of this water that I'm looking at using these symbols that I've put in, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right. So I would count this as having a total hardness of 13. Those aren't degrees. I'm just making up numbers here, right? So I would count this as having 13. Why? Because all calcium and magnesium counts towards hardness. But this doesn't tell me the whole story. Just counting magnesium and calcium, I need to know what they're paired with because some of these create limescale and some of them don't, right? So when I have it paired with carbonates, then I have limescale issues with that, particularly in situations like group heads, parts of our steam boilers, and those things. So let's take a look at that. If I was to count my carbonate hardness, I'm only counting the ones paired with yellow, right? So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8. Now you might be looking there and you saw another yellow, right? And that's this one here that's paired with sodium, right? And that is contributing towards our alkalinity, even though it's slightly different than our carbonate hardness. So I'm going to count this as 9. Okay. So that's an example. Now, in a future session, we're going to talk about what some really smart people have developed. They've created material that we call resin, little beads. They're these little tiny beads that pretend to be anions. And we can coat those beads with other cations that we would rather have, right? And we're not going to get into this too much because we need to open it up for the Q&A. But what we do with that is this pretends to be an anion, so I can take this anion on through, nothing happens, and then trade this calcium for sodium, reducing the risk of limescale buildup in my water. Now, we're not going to get too much into this technology, but you need to know it exists. And what we charge it with creates a completely different effect. For example, we could have that same filter and not just get rid of the calcium, but boost the magnesium, right? This is something that we only do at BWT. It's patented technology where we can trade this calcium for magnesium, which we know has a direct impact on the perceived sweetness of the coffee. And for me personally, I find it most in the perceived acidity, particularly in the aftertaste of a coffee for me. And so that's a little bit.
Sorry, Ben, it's good that you mentioned this because we just had a question about that. Which of
Oh,
these
yeah. What's the question?
has the greatest,
Yeah.
has the
Can
greatest
someone read the
impact in
question?
coffee extraction and flavor?
Can you ask that one more time, please?
Which of these compounds has the greatest impact on coffee extraction and flavor?
That's a really good question. And I think what we have found is in the research that we've done in conjunction or that we've supported with the University of Zurich and others is that both calcium and magnesium have a significant impact on the extraction and flavor of coffee in the right amounts, especially depending on what they're like paired with. But it's all about achieving that balance, right? But what we know is it's much easier to naturally gain calcium in water It's much harder to introduce magnesium in a way that doesn't also put our equipment at risk. And that's the kind of the wonder of this particular technology is that we're able to introduce magnesium in a way that doesn't threaten our equipment. So I'm sorry that if that's not a complete answer for that, but the answer is they all do, right? They all have a significant impact on our extraction. However, that calcium is heavy. If you've ever seen the periodic chart, right, it's in order of weight. That calcium is heavy, right, and it poses a more significant risk to our equipment along the way. So it's something that we have to work harder to deal with. Other questions? There's one final piece on the bottom of that handout that I want to make sure that you get, and then we'll bring it to our Q&A part of the session. Hopefully, you're walking away from this with more questions than you came in, because what I wanted to do today is spark that curiosity that we can kind of work on throughout the near future, right? If that carbonate hardness up here, if this carbonate hardness is much less than the total hardness, that means we might have a lot of sulfates. If you have ever heard the common name for calcium sulfate, it's called gypsum. It's actually calcium sulfate dihydrate, right? And so gypsum, friends, if your steam boiler gets a bunch of limescale built up in it, the technicians can usually use some acid, to bring that off pretty easy. Not this stuff. It is a problem, right? And to fight this, you need a particular type of solution. And we obviously have that solution. So it's important to note and put on this study guide for later that if the carbonate hardness, let's just say, is less than 50%, let's just say 50, right? That there could be gypsum in the water, right? If there's less than 50%, it's worth investigating, even if it's close to that, so that we can make sure that we're eliminating this as an issue. Now, I've taken you through quite a bit of information. This has been a 30-minute chemistry class, right? But again, my goal was not for you to walk away from this having retained all this chemistry knowledge. It's more about you making this handout, something that's a guide for you for future discussions, future education, and starting to plant that seed. And please give yourself some grace when it comes to learning water. It's difficult, right? It's like learning a new language, right? And if you're not constantly engaging with it, you'll have to remind yourself of some of these details. But I truly believe that if you're able to learn about measuring these key aspects of water, you're going to put yourself in a position to be a stronger consumer and a stronger player within a more sustainable coffee supply chain. So now I'll just open it up to any questions you may have. And I'll stop sharing so that I can see what's going on.
Okay.
Looks like we have another request for word. There we go.
Gonzalo, he has a question.
Okay.
Hi, hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you. I was wondering, you talked about how the other things, but with bicarbonate, they affect alkalinity, but you didn't talk about the carbon acid, or it was not grouped in the thing. Why is that?
Yes. Great question. Part of it had to do with the amount of time we have today, right? But so we're going to take you back. May I take you back to that, to the illustration? Let's do this. Back to the desktop. You're going to see yourself for a moment until I get this back up. Okay. So I started to talk a little bit about treatment, right? And one of the reasons that I didn't talk about this too much is I want to have it there for in the future. When I was talking about our ion exchange, right? When we're taking minerals that we don't want and keeping them and releasing minerals that we do want, one of the things that we will put in a cartridge for that purpose is hydrogen, right? We'll put hydrogen on that surface, let's go back to this one, of that resin so that we can trade it. Right? So let's say that I bring this anion through, nothing happens, right? You saw the bicarbonate come through, right? Then I take the calcium and stick it to the resin and release hydrogen, right? Now, what have I done? I've reduced our total hardness, right? Because I've removed that calcium, but I've also done something else. I'm canceling out that bicarbonate, right? So it is a decarbonizing function. This is when we're wanting to push that alkalinity down so that we can let our coffee shine, let the acidity shine. We don't want to do it too much. If we do it too much, we could end up making our water corrosive and it starts to damage our equipment and kind of make our coffee taste a little flat, right? So that is what you need to know about the property of carbonic acid is it wants to go back to water and carbon dioxide and release that carbon dioxide. Does that answer your question? Awesome.
Yes, Anita again from Peru.
Okay.
She says, sorry if this does not make any sense, but you mentioned carbon dioxide, right?
Sí, gracias,
Where do
gracias,
we
Blanca.
where do we see that in the handout? Thank you.
Oh, this is a very good question. You don't. You don't. Yeah. And so I've only included it as a pairing at the bottom. I feel like I need to communicate at the beginning that there's an important relationship with those two at the beginning because we try to return it back to it at the end. Right. So it's something that you can definitely feel free to add to the handout that there is a special relationship between those two. But you've inspired me. I think if I do this again, I will include that in the common compounds at the beginning so that we know that it already exists in water because it usually does. So thank you. That's a good tip.
And she's also saying, asking, how do you adjust water chemistry for different coffee processing methods, such as washed, honey, and natural coffees?
Oh, this is interesting. Now, do you mean in the extraction process or the conduction of that processing of the coffee?
Anita, can you answer that? I guess that in the whole processing. Because well, depending on that process of the coffee in particular, if there is any way into when they get into contact with water, if that is where there is any way to modify or adjust.
Well, let me answer that question in two parts. I'll do it both ways. And so let's talk about how do you modify water for producing, actually conducting that process. And I have to tell you, there's much research to be done about that. I think if you understand how to measure your water, which is step number one, and then you know how to treat, or like it's about learning through research what our aim is, right? Measure is the same no matter what, right? So this carbonate hardness and alkalinity and total hardness is going to have an impact in those, obviously. Knowing what's in your water is the first step. I feel like there's a lot of questions out there and a lot of research to be done about what is the right water to be using in those processing methods. As far as getting it to where you want, if we know where you want to go, we know, okay, if this water is too hard, or if the water I want to use for my processing, I want it to have this hardness and this carbonate hardness, then we know we're going to manage those minerals either by exchanging them, right? By trading out, as I just showed you on the screen, or we're going to remove them altogether. We're going to use a system like BWT's Best Barista to remove and completely erase the water and rewrite it. Of course, when we're processing coffee, we're using a lot of water, right? So we have to think of ways that we can do that that's sustainable, and that matches our budget for what we're trying to get done. So there's that. When it comes to doing it for coffee, more to come on that. We're learning about that all the time. And in a future webinar, we'll go through now aim, which is more your question, and then treat for that. So stay tuned for more on that. What else do we have?
We have another question, Alexia from Switzerland.
Uh-huh.
Chapter information, Alexia.
And then, thank
Hi.
you very much. Oh, you're great. Again, I'm fascinated about the way you're explaining chemistry. It's really great. Thank you. The question of Anita brought me to my question, actually.
Okay.
So she's on the producing side, and I was thinking of, okay, yes, definitely, there must be a big influence on the water. But I am now on the consuming side.
Mhm.
You optimize the water for the coffee extraction.
Mhm.
I recently read an article that if you drink coffee with milk, or nowadays often with milk alternatives, you have to adjust your coffee or your extraction, or maybe even your water, to fully get the wanted coffee flavor. Is there any research going on? Like
Well, let me see if
optimize
I
the
can.
water for oat milk drinks with
Oh, no,
coffee or
this is
something?
interesting. Well, this is a really interesting topic, and I just need to tell you, I haven't read anything about it. So you just need to know that right off the
Okay.
bat. But I think
Thank
that's
you.
really interesting. If I was to give we have a doctor in the room with Dr. Frank here, Neuhausen. So maybe he has an answer for this that I don't. But the first thing that comes to mind is this, is the pH of the water, right? Or and then the acidity of the water and how that interacts with other ingredients in our beverages. It makes sense what you're saying, that obviously it would have an impact as we take different ingredients and put them in a beverage, that the pH of the water or the coffee could have an impact on the rest of it. And I'm really looking forward to maybe doing some reading. The same article, maybe you can share it with me because I would love to learn more about that. But I think what's important to note is what you're saying is that water is a big deal. It's a lot of it's in our coffee, right? It's 98% of what's in there. And it would come as no surprise to me that it's going to have a big impact with that. But do I know how to aim specifically for those milks? No, but I'd love to kind of learn that some more. It's a great question. It's
Okay.
a fun
Yeah,
topic to
thank you, Ben.
dive
Thank you.
into. Yeah. Let's see what we got here. Go over the second page of the handout with the, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, talking about the handout, there is
Mhm.
another question about it, and it says, I would love for you to go over the second page of the handout with the
Mhm.
alkalinity and total hardness, since the compound
Yes.
measure, yeah, seems to
Isn't
be
that
the same in
yeah,
both lines. What would be the difference?
absolutely. Isn't that confusing?
Mhm.
I'm with you. For, years in the coffee industry, whenever somebody would start talking to us about water, they would put that formula on the screen and say calcium bicarbonate. And in my mind, I hear the word bi and I think two, and I see those letters and I see like the number three, and then my brain would shut off, right? I just couldn't like stick with it, right? But let me see if I can explain this to you well. On total hardness, or in both of these situations, we needed to find a way in the industry to use one unit to communicate these, right? So when you see calcium bicarbonate used as the unit for both total hardness and alkalinity, bear with me, this is a whole nother workshop that we could do. It's about equivalence, right? Now, if any of you have a water softener in your house, right, it's where you're trading calcium for salt, right, for sodium, you have a salt-based water softener, you are reducing the total hardness, but you're keeping that alkalinity high so you don't corrode your pipes, right? So when we soften water and we measure that alkalinity, it's still going to be high, right? It's still going to be where it needs to be. So when we describe alkalinity, it's in the equivalency. It's what's equivalent of calcium bicarbonate, right? Even though it might be sodium bicarbonate, we're saying it's this much sodium bicarbonate that would be equivalent to calcium bicarbonate, and it's the same for the total. That can be confusing because you don't see the word equivalent there, but it's in equivalency to ppms of calcium bicarbonate. Does that help answer the question, Anna?
That
Thumbs
is
up.
Anna Martin. I don't know. I don't know. Well, we'll see. But while that she answers back,
Wonderful. Thank you. I
she
know that's a confusing
there
one.
is a last comment and says, could you please give us some references or articles you know so we can continue researching and learning about the chemistry of water? That's very important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And yeah.
Yes, that's going to be something that maybe we can kind of funnel through IWCA, but then also please watch for other webinars from this group. And then we're always offering workshops either online through BWT and especially at SEA events. So we're going to be doing some things, some activations with IWCA at World of Coffee Panama. I know that not everyone can make it there, but for those that you do, make sure that you're on the lookout for some water education we'll be offering there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we're gonna have an IWCA encounter for chapters in Latin America, and of course we're gonna have some time with WBT for more of this instruction and more of this education on water. So that's really lovely. Thank you so much. So all I can see in our chat box is thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Ben, Frank, for this fascinating webinar. Hopefully we can continue the chemistry class. Nice. And everybody congratulating and saying thank you. So
Thank you. Awesome. Our pleasure to be here.
okay. Well, I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add, Frank.
I'm just very grateful that we had the opportunity, as Ben mentioned, to start this discussion about water chemistry, because it's very complex, and in the personal trainings that Ben is offering, you will see, let's say, also go a little bit more in the not only in the theoretical part but also in the practical part, and to see and to taste the difference of different water qualities related to different types of coffee and also to different brewing methods. And I just want to add, because there was a question about influence on water, let's say along the coffee chain. So if you have a producing country and wet treatment, and if you have roasting and also using water and things like that, this is a complete new world. And to be honest, we are not in that. We as BWT water+more, we are fully focused on the effect of extraction directly in the machine based on different types of water. This is exactly in particular, and this is something that was complex enough for us in University of Zurich for several years. So even this, only to go for this, is complex. But in the meantime, we have a lot of knowledge that we really can share, and what is more important, solutions to offer to the people in the market to go for exactly what they want to do. So
Okay.
thanks a lot from our side.
Well, and again, more comments, interesting, good coffee. Let's continue with this subject, etc., etc. So this is a success, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. We will stay tuned. Obviously, we will publish this recording of the webinar through our YouTube channel and share more information when possible. So see you around, because I know we will see each other in other webinars or in other coffee events. Let's keep in touch and have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, Ana Maria, and the rest of the chapter in Germany. Thank you.